I never imagined that my 60th birthday would be the day I discover my husband of 35 years had been living a double life. The moment I found that receipt in his jacket pocket, my entire world shattered into 1,000 pieces. But what came next? That's what nobody saw coming. But before we get into the story, please support us by liking and subscribing right now. I also want to say hi. Leave your name, city, and the word present in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from, even in faraway places. My name is Margaret, and for the past 35 years, I thought I knew everything about my husband, Richard. We built a life together in Portland, Oregon. We raised 2 beautiful children, now grown with families of their own. Richard worked as a construction foreman, and I managed our home. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, or so I believed. That morning started like any other Wednesday. Richard left early for a job site, kissing my forehead the way he'd done for decades. "See you tonight, Maggie," he said, using the nickname he'd called me since we were young. I smiled, still half asleep, never suspecting that by evening that same man would become a stranger to me. The pain started around noon, sharp, stabbing sensations in my abdomen that made me double over while folding laundry. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking it was just indigestion. But it got worse. Much worse. "Richard, please, I need you to take me to the doctor," I gasped into the phone, my voice trembling. "What? No, Maggie, you know I don't have money for that. Those hospital bills are expensive. Why don't you just take some aspirin and lie down?" "Richard, please listen to me. I'm bleeding. I need to go to the hospital." "Jesus, you're being dramatic. Look, I'm busy. I have to drive my boss to the airport. Just figure it out, okay?" The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, tears streaming down my face. Not from the physical pain, but from the realization that my husband of 35 years had just dismissed my suffering like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. I somehow managed to call an Uber, each movement sending waves of agony through my body. At the emergency room, they discovered I had severe internal bleeding from complications with fibroids. The doctor looked at me with concern. "Mrs. Thompson, you could have died if you'd waited any longer. Where's your husband?" I didn't have an answer. While recovering in the hospital bed later that afternoon, I noticed Richard had left his work jacket draped over the chair in our bedroom before I left. Something made me reach for it. Maybe divine intervention, maybe just a wife's intuition that something was terribly wrong. In the inside pocket, I found a restaurant receipt. Bella Notte, the most expensive Italian restaurant in downtown Portland. Dinner for 2, champagne, dessert, $347. We hadn't been to a nice restaurant in over 5 years. Richard always said we couldn't afford it. My hands shook as I noticed the date. Last Friday. The same Friday he'd told me he was working late on a project in Beaverton. I kept digging. In another pocket, movie tickets. A hotel key card with a handwritten note. "Room 502. Can't wait to see you again. Jay." The woman who'd been lying in that hospital bed, wondering if she'd survive the afternoon, suddenly felt something shift inside her. Not just physical pain, but an awakening. A rage so pure and focused that it burned away 35 years of being dismissed, overlooked, and taken for granted. When Richard finally showed up at the hospital 3 hours later, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine, I didn't say a word about what I'd found. I just watched him. Really watched him. And I saw him clearly for the first time in decades. "How are you feeling?" he asked, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'll survive," I said quietly. "I always do." He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I'm sorry I couldn't come earlier. Work, you know how it is." I nodded, slipping the receipts back into my purse. I know exactly how it is. That night, lying alone in that hospital bed while Richard went home to get some rest, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. I was going to find out exactly who my husband really was. And then, when I had the full picture, I was going to make sure he understood exactly what he'd thrown away. My neighbor Sarah had always been kind to me, though I'd kept her at arm's length, too busy managing a household for a man who didn't appreciate it. When I got home from the hospital the next day, she saw me struggling with my bags and rushed over. "Margaret, honey, you don't look well. Come inside, let me make you some tea." I found myself telling her everything, my composure finally cracking. She listened without judgment, her hand on mine. "You deserve so much better than this," she said softly. "And I'm going to help you. We're going to find out the truth." What neither of us knew then was that the truth would be far worse than I'd imagined, and my revenge would be sweeter than I ever dreamed possible. Friends, every story I tell you is released every day. But YouTube will only show them to you if you tap the red subscribe button. Please do it now while I'm speaking. Tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll never miss a story. Have you done it yet? Thank you. The next few weeks were a masterclass in deception. Only I was the student and Richard the unwitting teacher. I learned to smile when he came home late, to not ask questions when he showered immediately upon arrival, scrubbing away evidence of his betrayal, to pretend I didn't notice when he'd hide his phone screen or step outside to take calls. But I was gathering evidence. Every receipt I found while doing laundry. Every strange charge on our credit card statement that I photographed with my phone. Every lie about working late that I verified by calling his job site, pretending to be a concerned wife just checking on dinner plans. Sarah became my confidant and partner in investigation. She was a paralegal at a law firm downtown, and she knew exactly what I'd need for a divorce. "Margaret, you need to understand something," she said one afternoon over coffee at her kitchen table, her voice gentle but firm. "Oregon is an equitable distribution state. That means the court will divide assets fairly, but not necessarily equally. You need documentation of everything." I showed her the folder I'd been building. Bank statements, credit card bills, text message screenshots I'd managed to get when Richard left his phone unattended. Her eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. "This is good, really good. But Margaret, I need to ask you something. What do you want from all this? Just a divorce? Or do you want him to really understand what he's done?" I thought about it for a long moment. "I want him to know what it feels like to lose everything," I said quietly. "The way he made me feel like I was nothing. I want him to feel that." Sarah nodded slowly. "Then we need to be smart about this, strategic. Are you ready for that?" I was more ready than I'd ever been for anything in my life. The turning point came on a Thursday evening. Richard had told me he was going to a work conference in Seattle for the weekend. I'd nodded, kissed his cheek, and wished him a safe trip. What he didn't know was that I'd already checked with his boss, Greg, who'd seemed confused when I mentioned the conference. "Conference? We don't have anything scheduled, Mrs. Thompson." "Is Richard okay?" I'd made up some excuse about getting dates mixed up and hung up quickly, but now I had confirmation. He wasn't going to Seattle for work. He was going somewhere with her. "Do you want to follow him?" Sarah asked when I told her. "No," I said. "I want to meet her." It took some detective work, but between the hotel keycard I'd found and some creative Facebook stalking, I figured out who Jay was. Jennifer Morrison, 45 years old, Richard's boss's assistant. A woman 15 years younger than me, with honey blonde hair and a figure that hadn't carried 2 children. I felt sick looking at her photos, not because she was beautiful, but because I saw what Richard saw. Youth, excitement. Someone who didn't remind him that he was 62 years old, with bad knees and high blood pressure. But then I noticed something else in Jennifer's photos. In several of them, she was wearing jewelry I recognized. A bracelet I'd seen in our credit card statements. A necklace I'd thought Richard bought for our anniversary but never gave me. Even a designer purse that cost more than our monthly grocery budget. My husband had been buying gifts for his mistress with our money. Money I'd helped save by clipping coupons and shopping sales for 35 years. Money that should have gone toward our retirement, our grandchildren's education funds, our future. The rage that had been simmering inside me ignited into something cold and calculating. I created a fake Facebook profile using a stock photo of an attractive woman in her 30s. I named her Jessica Parker and gave her a complete backstory. Then, I sent Richard a friend request. He accepted within an hour. I started slowly. A like on a photo here, a comment there. Nothing too forward, just enough to plant a seed. Then, I sent him a private message. Hey Richard, I saw your construction company's page. I might need some work done on my house in Lake Oswego. Could you give me an estimate? His response came quickly. Sure, I'd be happy to help. When's good for you? Over the next few days, we messaged back and forth. I played the role of the interested client perfectly, and then I let Jessica become interested in more than just construction work. A flirty comment, a suggestion that we meet for coffee to discuss the project. Richard took the bait immediately. You know, we could meet for dinner instead. I know a great place downtown. I bet he did. Probably the same expensive Italian restaurant he'd taken Jennifer to. I scheduled the dinner for Friday night, the same Friday night he'd told me he was going to Seattle with Jennifer. I watched him pack his overnight bag, helped him check that he had everything he needed, and kissed him goodbye at the door. Have a good trip, honey, I said sweetly. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too, Maggie. I'll call you when I get to the hotel. He never made it to Seattle. Instead, he went to Bella Notte, dressed in his best suit, waiting for a woman who didn't exist. While he sat there, checking his phone every few minutes for Jessica's messages, I was sitting 3 tables away, wearing a wig and sunglasses, watching everything. And Jennifer? She was there too, at another table, also in disguise, having received an anonymous message that her married boyfriend was meeting another woman. The beauty of revenge isn't in the act itself, but in the precision of its execution. As I sat there in that dimly lit restaurant, watching Richard check his watch nervously, adjusting his tie, ordering wine for 2, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Jennifer arrived exactly at 7:30, just as I'd predicted she would. The anonymous message I'd sent her had been carefully worded. Your boyfriend Richard Thompson is meeting another woman at Bella Notte tonight at 7 p.m. Thought you should know. A concerned friend. She'd taken the bait immediately, probably because deep down she knew the kind of man Richard was. After all, he'd cheated on his wife of 35 years with her. What made her think she was special? I watched her scan the restaurant, her eyes landing on Richard at his corner table. But she didn't approach. Instead, she took a seat at the bar, ordering a drink, her back to him, but her eyes on the mirror behind the bar where she could watch his every move. My phone buzzed. Right on schedule. It was Sarah, texting from outside the restaurant. Everything ready on my end. You sure about this? Absolutely, I typed back. Let's do it. What happened next was choreographed with the precision of a ballet. At exactly 8 o'clock, Richard's phone rang. I knew because I was the one calling, from a burner phone Sarah had helped me purchase. I watched him glance at the screen, see the unfamiliar number, and answer cautiously. Hello? Using a voice modulator app, I spoke clearly. Mr. Thompson, this is Portland Memorial Hospital. Your wife Margaret has been in a serious accident. She's in critical condition and asking for you. You need to come immediately. I'd practiced this moment in my head 100 times. Would he panic? Would he show genuine concern? Would he even care? What he did was worse than I imagined. He glanced around the restaurant, lowered his voice, and said, Look, I'm in the middle of something important right now. Can't this wait? Is she going to die? My hands shook, even though I'd expected something like this. But hearing it out loud, hearing my husband of 35 years ask if his wife was going to die as if it were a scheduling inconvenience, cut deeper than any physical pain ever could. Sir, this is an emergency. Fine. I'll be there in an hour, maybe 2. He hung up. He actually hung up. Then he turned back to the table, took a long sip of his wine, and continued scrolling through his phone, presumably looking for messages from Jessica that would never come. I gave Sarah the signal. Within minutes, she entered the restaurant, walked straight to Jennifer at the bar, and sat down next to her. "Jennifer Morrison?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. Jennifer turned, suspicious. "Who's asking?" "I'm Sarah Chen, attorney at law. I represent Margaret Thompson in her divorce proceedings against Richard Thompson. That man you're watching, the one you've been having an affair with, his wife has hired me to ensure he loses everything in the divorce. And I'm here to offer you a choice." Jennifer's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sarah pulled out a folder and placed it on the bar. "These are copies of bank statements, credit card receipts, text messages, and hotel records documenting your affair with Richard Thompson. We have everything. Photos of you two together. Records of gifts he purchased for you using joint marital assets. Everything." "Why are you telling me this?" Jennifer whispered, her voice shaking. "Because Margaret Thompson is not interested in destroying you. She's interested in destroying him. And we're offering you immunity if you testify on our behalf in the divorce proceedings. You tell the truth about the affair, about the gifts, about everything. In exchange, we don't name you as a co-respondent in the alienation of affection lawsuit we're preparing." Oregon doesn't actually have alienation of affection laws, but Jennifer didn't know that. And the threat was enough to make her face drain of all color. I need to think about it." "You have 24 hours. After that, Margaret proceeds with naming you specifically in all court documents, which become public record. Imagine what that does to your career, working for Richard's boss. Imagine what your family thinks." Sarah stood up, placed a business card on the bar, and walked away, leaving Jennifer staring down at the folder with shaking hands. Meanwhile, Richard was still waiting, still checking his phone, still completely unaware that his entire life was unraveling around him. I wanted to confront him right there, to walk up to that table, throw off my disguise, and scream at him for everything he'd done. But that would have been emotional, reactive, satisfying in the moment, but ultimately empty. Instead, I took photos, dozens of them. Richard alone at the table, looking desperate and pathetic. Richard checking his phone obsessively. Richard ordering a second bottle of wine, drinking alone. At 9 o'clock, I sent him a text from Jessica's number. "So sorry I can't make it tonight. Family emergency. Rain check?" I watched him read the message, watched his shoulders slump, watched him signal for the check, pay $300 for a meal he'd eaten alone, and walk out of the restaurant looking defeated. From my table, I raised my wine glass in a silent toast. To new beginnings. To self-respect. To revenge served ice cold. But the night wasn't over. As Richard left, Jennifer remained at the bar, still staring at that folder. I watched her open it, read through the documents, and then do something I didn't expect. She pulled out her phone and took photos of everything. Then she called someone. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw her crying, saw her nod, saw her shoulders shake with sobs. When she finally left the restaurant 20 minutes later, she'd made her decision. I just didn't know yet which side she'd chosen. If you want to know how this story ends and discover many more, hit the red subscribe button. It's free, and it helps me a lot. Jennifer called Sarah the next morning. I was sitting in Sarah's kitchen when the phone rang, my hands wrapped around a coffee mug, still trying to process everything that had happened the night before. "This is Sarah Chen," she answered professionally, putting the phone on speaker so I could hear. "This is Jennifer Morrison." Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying all night. "I'll testify. I'll tell you everything. But I need you to know something first." Sarah glanced at me, and I nodded for her to continue. "What do you need us to know, Ms. Morrison?" "I'm not the only one. There have been others, many others." The world seemed to tilt. I'd suspected, of course, but hearing it confirmed was like being punched in the stomach all over again. Jennifer continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. There was Patricia, his secretary 5 years ago, Maria, who ran the coffee cart near his job site, someone named Rebecca, who I think was a client. Richard, he bragged about it sometimes when he'd had too much to drink. He said his wife was too old, too boring, too focused on the kids to notice what he was doing. He said you'd stopped being a woman and become just a mother, a housekeeper. He said you'd let yourself go. I felt Sarah's hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently. But I didn't cry. I'd done enough crying. Instead, I felt that cold rage crystallizing into something harder, sharper, more dangerous. "How long have you been seeing him?" I asked, my voice steady. There was a pause. 1.5 years. "But Margaret, there's something else you need to know." "What?" "He was planning to leave you." "Next month. He'd been saving money in a separate account, one you don't know about. He told me that once he had enough saved up, he was going to divorce you and we were going to move to California together. Start fresh." The betrayal cut deeper with every word. Not just the affair, but the premeditation, the planning, the cold calculation of it all. "Where is this account?" Sarah asked, already pulling out a notepad. "Pacific Northwest Credit Union." "It's under his name and his mother's name, who died 3 years ago. He never closed it after she passed. He has about $45,000 in there. Money he's been skimming from his paychecks, from side jobs, from everywhere. $45,000. While I'd been clipping coupons and buying generic brands to save money. While I'd put off getting my teeth fixed because we couldn't afford it. While I'd worn the same winter coat for 8 years. "Jennifer, why are you telling us all this?" I asked. "What changed?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because last night, after your lawyer left, I called my sister. She helped me see that Richard is never going to change. If he could lie to you for 35 years, he'd lie to me too. And honestly, I saw my future sitting at that bar. In 10 years, I'd be you, 60 years old, replaced by someone younger, wondering how I'd been so stupid." "You're doing the right thing," Sarah said firmly. "We'll protect you as much as we can. Can you come to my office Monday morning? We need to get your statement notarized and documented." "I'll be there." After Jennifer hung up, Sarah and I sat in silence for a while. Finally, she spoke. "Margaret, with this information, we can take him for everything. The hidden account, the documented affairs, the financial deception. In Oregon, that matters. The judge won't look kindly on this." But I was thinking about something else. Something Jennifer had said that had lodged in my brain like a splinter. "He said I'd stopped being a woman," I murmured. "That I'd become just a mother and a housekeeper." "Margaret, don't you dare let his words—" "No, Sarah, listen, he's right in a way. Not about me losing value or worth. But I did lose myself. Somewhere between raising kids and keeping house and making sure everyone else was happy, I forgot to ask if I was happy. I forgot to be Margaret instead of just Richard's wife. And now? Now I'm going to remember. But first, I'm going to make sure Richard understands exactly what he's lost." The plan we hatched that afternoon was more intricate than anything I'd ever done. It required timing, cooperation, and a willingness to play the long game. But I'd been playing the long game for 35 years. I was an expert. First, I hired a private investigator to document everything. Every woman Richard had been with, every lie he'd told, every dollar he'd hidden. The PI was a woman named Donna, recommended by Sarah, who'd built her career on exposing cheating spouses. "This is going to get expensive," Donna warned me during our first meeting. "I don't care. I want everything, every sordid detail." Second, I started documenting my own contributions to the marriage. 35 years of unpaid labor. Childcare, housekeeping, cooking, managing finances, supporting his career. Sarah helped me calculate what that would cost if I'd been paid market rates. The number was staggering, over $2 million. Third, and most importantly, I started building a new life. I enrolled in community college classes, something I'd always wanted to do, but Richard had discouraged. "What do you need an education for at your age?" he'd said. I started going to a gym, not to get Richard back, but because I wanted to feel strong. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with over the years, women who reminded me of who I used to be. And I started preparing for the confrontation I knew was coming. Richard still had no idea I knew anything. He thought he was being clever, sneaking around, living his double life. When Jennifer stopped answering his calls, he moved on to someone new. Donna caught him with her at a motel in Beaverton. More evidence for the pile. The final piece fell into place 3 months after that night at Bella Knott. The confrontation happened on what should have been our 36th wedding anniversary. Richard had come home that evening with grocery store flowers and a card he'd clearly picked up at the last minute. The kind of perfunctory gesture that used to make me grateful for any attention at all. "Happy anniversary, Maggie," he said, kissing my cheek with all the passion of someone kissing their grandmother. "Thank you, dear," I replied sweetly. "Actually, I have something for you too. Why don't you sit down?" He settled into his recliner, probably expecting I'd baked him a cake or bought him a new tie. Instead, I handed him a thick manila envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." I watched his face as he pulled out the documents. The divorce papers were on top, but underneath were copies of everything. Bank statements highlighting the hidden account. Photos of him with Jennifer, with Patricia, with Maria, with the new woman whose name I'd learned was Amanda. Credit card receipts for hotels, dinners, gifts. Text messages I'd recovered from the cloud backup he didn't know existed. Jennifer's notarized statement. Statements from 2 other women Donna had tracked down who were willing to testify. His face went from confused to pale to red with anger. "What the hell is this?" "This is 35 years of marriage ending, Richard. This is me finally understanding my worth. This is you losing everything." He stood up, the papers scattering. "You can't do this. You can't just throw away our marriage." "I'm not throwing it away. You did that years ago, multiple times, with multiple women, using money we both earned, money I saved while you spent it on your girlfriends." "Maggie, please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you called me boring? That you told Jennifer I'd let myself go? That you had $45,000 hidden away so you could abandon me? That you asked if I was going to die when the hospital called because it was inconvenient timing for your date?" His face went slack. "How did you—" "I know everything, Richard. Every lie. Every woman. Every dollar. And now the courts are going to know too." He tried anger first. "You bitch. You ungrateful spying bitch. After everything I've done for you. What have you done for me exactly? Provided a home? That's basic human decency, Richard, not some grand favor. I cooked your meals, cleaned your house, raised your children, supported your career, and managed our finances so efficiently that you had money to cheat on me with. You didn't do anything for me. You did everything to me." Then he tried pleading. "Maggie, please, I love you. Those women didn't mean anything. It was just a midlife crisis. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. You don't love me. You love having someone to come home to who asks no questions and makes no demands. You love having a wife who makes you look respectable while you play bachelor with women who don't know any better. But that's over now. You're not taking everything," he said, his voice turning threatening. "I'll fight you. You'll get nothing." I smiled then. A real smile. "Actually, Richard, here's what's going to happen. Oregon is an equitable distribution state, as you know. But judges have discretion when it comes to marital misconduct. And hiding assets, committing adultery with multiple partners, using marital funds for affairs? That's misconduct. My lawyer estimates I'll get about 70% of everything. The house, most of your retirement, your pension, alimony, and reimbursement for the hidden accounts. That's impossible. The impossible part was you thinking you'd get away with this. The impossible part was you underestimating me for 35 years. Did you really think I was so stupid, Richard? So blind? So worthless that I wouldn't eventually notice? I'll quit my job. I'll hide my money. You won't get a damn thing. Go ahead. It's called dissipation of assets, and it'll make things even worse for you in court. Plus, your boss, Greg, he knows everything," Jennifer told him. "He's not very happy that you've been conducting your affairs using company resources and time. There's a good chance you're getting fired anyway." That hit him hard. I watched the reality of his situation finally sink in. His face crumpled, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Maggie, please, don't do this. I'm begging you. We can start over. I'll be better, I promise." "Your promises are worthless, Richard. They have been for years. I'm done believing them." What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't care. Figure it out the way you made me figure out how to get to the hospital when I was bleeding and terrified. Figure it out the way you expected me to figure out how to raise 2 children while you were out cheating. Figure it out the way I've had to figure out everything else for 35 years while you did whatever you wanted." He sank back into his chair, deflated. "You've changed." "No, Richard, I haven't changed. I've just remembered who I was before I became your wife." That night, Richard packed a bag and left, staying with his brother in Seattle. The house felt emptier without him, but also lighter, cleaner. Like I'd opened windows and let fresh air flow through rooms that had been stale for decades. The divorce took 8 months. It was ugly. Richard fought me on everything, just like he'd threatened. But Jennifer testified. Patricia testified. Even Maria testified, though she was reluctant. The evidence was overwhelming. In the end, I got the house, 73% of his retirement, half his pension, 3 years of alimony, and reimbursement for the hidden accounts plus interest. Richard walked away with his truck, some furniture, and the crushing weight of his own choices. But the real victory wasn't financial. The real victory was the woman I saw in the mirror the morning after the divorce was finalized. She was 61 years old, with gray hair she'd stopped coloring because she liked the silver. She had laugh lines around her eyes and wrinkles that told the story of a life lived. She wasn't trying to look younger or different or more acceptable to anyone. She was just herself, and she was beautiful. I finished my associate's degree in business administration. At 61, I was the oldest person in most of my classes, but I didn't care. The younger students treated me like a curiosity at first, then with respect when they realized I was serious. I got a job as an office manager for a nonprofit that helps women leaving abusive relationships. The irony wasn't lost on me. My own marriage wasn't physically abusive, but emotional abuse, financial abuse, the slow erosion of self-worth, those were just as damaging. Sarah became one of my closest friends. We have coffee every Tuesday and laugh about that night at Bella Notte, how nervous we both were, how perfectly it all came together. Jennifer reached out to me 6 months after the divorce. She wanted to apologize in person. I met her at a coffee shop downtown, curious about what she'd say. "I'm not going to insult you by saying I didn't know he was married," she started. "I knew. I just didn't care, or I told myself I didn't care. I told myself you were probably a terrible wife, that you probably deserved it somehow. I needed to believe that to justify what I was doing. And now? Now I see how he talked about you, how he dismissed you, and I know he'll eventually do the same to whoever comes after me. And there will be someone after me. There always is with men like Richard. Thank you for testifying," I said. "I know it wasn't easy. It was the least I could do. And Margaret, I'm sorry. Truly." I accepted her apology, not because I forgave her completely, but because holding on to that anger would only poison me, not her. As for Richard, I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved in with Amanda, the latest girlfriend. She was 42, divorced with a teenage daughter. Last I heard, he was complaining about how expensive everything was, how he couldn't afford the lifestyle he used to have. My children, both in their 30s now, were devastated when they learned the truth about their father. My daughter, Emily, stopped speaking to him entirely. My son, James, tried to maintain a relationship, but it was strained. Richard blamed me for turning the kids against him, as if I'd needed to do anything beyond tell them the truth. Looking back on everything, I understand now that I spent 35 years of my life making myself smaller so Richard could feel bigger. I silenced my voice so his could be louder. I dimmed my light so his could shine brighter. And for what? A man who saw me as nothing more than a convenience, a service provider, a placeholder until something better came along? never again. If you enjoyed this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part impressed you most. Was it when I caught him at the restaurant? When Jennifer agreed to testify? Or maybe it was just seeing a woman choose herself after years of choosing everyone else? There's more tomorrow. See you there. The most important thing I learned is this: it's never too late to remember who you are. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to start over. I'm 61 years old, and my life is just beginning.